stop me now. Yeah, 'cause I'm just beginning, can't stop me now.
Hello, I'm Grover Silcox, your host for Boundless, where we give voice to Good Shepherd Rehabilitation's patients and their families. You'll hear the compelling real-life stories of folks who have braved the trials, triumphs, and tribulations of rehabilitation and the boundless possibilities that lie on the other side of that journey. It's a pleasure to welcome Debbie and Steve Schmid from Quakertown on our show today. It's Debbie who is the center of our story. Steve has gone along for the ride and has been very important on this journey that they have taken together. They're husband and wife, 44 years. Debbie began having problems with her balance, and doctors really weren't quite sure what was causing it, but it was causing her tremendous problems. And the balance issues got progressively worse. And Debbie needed a wheelchair to get around safely. And I'm glad to report that she's now able to get around without the wheelchair. But Debbie and Steve, welcome. Let's go to Debbie for the rest of the story. And Steve, feel free to chime in because you're certainly, as I said, part of the story.
Well, did you want me to start with what originally happened?
Yeah, what happened?
So I was running a meeting, and I started having problems talking. I couldn't drink. Stuff started running out of my mouth. And someone came in later on to the meeting and looked at me and said, "Something's wrong with you, Deb." So I called my husband. Then I called the doctor, and he told me to go to a hospital quick.
Right.
So
and I should tell the audience that you were an IT director or manager?
Manager, yes.
For American Water Company?
Yes, at the time, yes.
And you were actually overseeing a staff of more than 25 people?
Not at that time, but in the past I have. At that time, I must have had, for a project we were working on, we probably had about 8-10 people, and there was also a consulting company we were dealing with, and we had a deliverable due for an estimate for a project we wanted the consultant company to do for us in the next day or two. So it was rather hot potato.
Right.
So that's what we were waiting on, was we were trying to finish up this deliverable, get everything in order so we could hand it to management, upper management, so they could see what the estimate was going to be and approve it.
And then when you were having the onset of this issue, that's what you were involved with.
Right, that's what I was involved with.
Right.
So what happened was I had got my car and started driving, trying to find a hospital.
Right, and you're in the Hershey area.
I'm in the Hershey area, and there's Hershey Medical. I couldn't find it. I'm driving around. I knew the Hershey was around there, but I couldn't find it. So I set my GPS for a hospital, and it sent me someplace that was like 30 miles away.
Wow.
And I knew that wasn't right. And then I started getting worse. I was trying to talk. I couldn't talk. I was just knew that something was really not right.
Right. Your face was drooping?
My face was drooping, yeah, because of the Bell's palsy on the right side of my face.
Right.
So I started getting really freaked out, to say it the least. So I was driving, and I looked, and I realized I just passed a doctor's office, and the lights were on about 6:30 at night. Wow. So I turned around, and I pulled into the doctor's office, and I walked into the doctor's office, and there was a doctor standing literally right there. I mean, unbelievable. But she took a look at me, and then she said, "You okay?" And I just looked at her and said, and then, "No." And she walked me over, and they talked to me for a minute or two, and then they called the ambulance. The ambulance came out, did the pre-stroke, because they thought maybe it was a stroke, evaluation, and then they took me to Hershey Hospital.
Wow. And this is a completely unfamiliar area to you. You're far from Quakertown.
Right. And she had called me, even when I could hear her on the phone, it sounded more like stroke symptoms.
Right.
And she was telling me her face is droopy and that sort of stuff. So at that point, I got in the car and started driving out to Hershey Medical Center.
Right. And Steve, you have a little experience, right? Because you're a professional caregiver. Is that it?
As it turned out, I had been a printer for 35 years and lost my job. And the first job that I got after that was a caregiver. So I had 7 years worth of experience before Debbie got sick.
Got it.
So at
Working
least-
with people with various disabilities.
Oh, yeah, multiple different kinds. So I was used to people being bedridden in wheelchairs and that sort of stuff. So it wasn't totally new to me. But
Right.
we didn't know what stage she was at that time.
We didn't even know what I had.
And the unfortunate situation is that Hershey Medical was dealing with a big flu outbreak. So they were swamped with people with flu.
my gosh.
And we were in the, like the hallways, the
Right.
emergency room hallways for what, 2 days?
2 days.
Before she even got a hotel or a hospital room.
Wow. And this is, I think you may have said it, 2018?
Yes.
So it's just
2018.
prior to COVID and all that, which
Yeah.
would have
Right.
even exacerbated it even worse.
Yeah, but they got me in a room.
Oh, thank
They did.
goodness.
They got me in the neurological room
Right.
area, and they were doing testing when I was still sitting in the hallway. So they were working. It's just that it was kind of strange sitting in the hallway.
Did they ultimately admit you?
Oh yeah, I was admitted. I was
Yeah.
admitted that night.
Right.
Yeah, because they started doing MRIs and they realized something was wrong. And
Did they
re-
think it might have been a stroke or
Yeah,
what were
they did. They did the stroke protocol. They put me through that whole big machine. Took my breath out of my hair and all that other stuff just to see if I had a stroke.
Wow. And meantime, Steve is looking for your car because you don't.
Not until that point. Right then, we were still we didn't worry about the car at all.
Right, of course.
So we were waiting for her to get a room and her diagnosis, and it was probably on the third day that I had to go venture out and try to find her
And you're
car.
not even sure where the car is. 'Cause
After the Eagles won the Super Bowl.
you remembered all the important stuff.
Right.
That's good. You eventually did find Debbie's car,
we did
right?
find
That's
the
good.
car
Oh,
and-
that's the doctor. Okay. Thank goodness for that doctor, though. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we had no idea. Had no idea where I left the car.
Yeah, we had to do a Google search, find all the doctors in that general area, call each one of them, describe the car, and then one of them said, "Yeah, that's parked out in our parking lot." So,
Wow. And so the big mystery is what's causing all this? Because it turns out it's not a stroke.
No, it was not a stroke. What it turns out is that I gotten shingles in my inner ear. So
And it's not even something you could see because eventually shingles, you can see the sores and the blisters and so
Right.
forth. But this is in your ear, so
Right.
you have no idea.
right, and at the time they called it a virus in my inner ear.
Right.
And they started giving me medicine to take care of the virus because what they saw, because they did the full MRI workup, and what they saw was that my nerves were really swollen, and that they were all like tight, like really close and swollen in the ear canal.
Clearly a problem.
Right, and it impacted my seventh nerve. That's why I had the Bell's palsy, the facial.
Right.
My eighth nerve, which is the nerve for the balance. That's why I ultimately had the issue with the balance. And my sixth nerve, but that didn't show up right away. But your sixth nerve is your the eye nerve, and ultimately I had my eyes were crossed. Right,
you had double vision.
double vision, and because my eye was paralyzed, I ended up going down to Wills Hospital because my sixth eye was paralyzed, and I couldn't handle light. I was wearing patches, and I ended up going to eye therapy at Good Shepherd for about 5 years.
Wow. And so it turns out shingles
Shingles.
was the cause.
Yeah, get your shingle shot, everybody. Believe me, get the shingle shot.
Wow. And the balance issues, and you're driving around in an unfamiliar area, desperate for some help, and that had to be frightening.
Yeah, it was actually very scary. I'm a very independent person, and I always have been, but it was scary.
Wow. So what happens after Hershey Hospital? How do you get to Good Shepherd?
How do I get to Good Shepherd? I got to Good Shepherd on a long road. I ended up going to a couple of places first. Ended up going to another therapy for a while.
Well, let me interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Sure.
When she was in the hospital, they had their own rehabilitation center where she went from the
Yes.
hospital to the rehab.
Right.
From there, they said, okay, we did as much as we can with her. You have to find somewhere closer to home. Well, the condition that Deb was in, nobody would take her. She had so many issues that they were used to people with walkers and minor therapy, but she was so far gone, nobody wanted to touch her.
Thanks.
So,
Wow.
so it took us a long time to find somewhere she would go.
Yeah, I
So-
forgot about that.
And that's got to be a morale killer. I mean, they're not, these facilities aren't even going to take
Right.
me.
And even the
Yeah.
ones that were recommended that might be able to do it, they were swamped. They couldn't take her. So they were either too full or we couldn't find some place. And we started out with a local place where they had to turn all the lights off to deal with her. They had to put her in a corner and just work with her by herself. It normally would take two people, one with a wheelchair behind her, somebody else walking with her. She would only do 10, 15 minutes at a time and would have to rest. So we went that route before we actually found Good Shepherd.
Yeah, we found Good Shepherd through our neurologist. She said that we needed somebody who was able to think outside of the box because of what was going on with my nerves. She told me that the nerves can regenerate, or they can, and I forget what she called it, but the nerves can actually bypass the problem and go to another nerve and get that nerve to work to do it. There's a medical term for
Right.
it. But she told me about this, and she's a St. Luke's neurologist, and she said, we need to get somebody who's willing to think outside the box because it's going to take a while for these nerves to decide what they're going to do, if they're going to do it.
Right.
And so they started looking for somebody who could think outside of the box, and that's how I ended up at Good Shepherd. I left a decent therapist to go to Good Shepherd.
Wow. Which really tells you something about, I guess the instinct is to try to get the cure on the shelf. Like, we just go to the standard answer.
Right, well, that was like with Hershey Medical Center. Like I said, they had the epidemic of flu going on. They wanted the bed, so they wanted to find something quick to put a diagnosis on her. So they said the Bell palsy, and they released her. So at that time, it really wasn't getting help for shingles or anything. They just got rid of her. So
Neurologist.
when she did go to Good Shepherd, it wasn't just the vestibular she had a problem with. It was the vision. So we had to have a vision therapy. She also needed cognitive because she had difficulty.
Cognitive
She had difficulty speaking and getting her thoughts. So we were there for 3 therapies each visit. So
I can say this, I was a mess.
Well, when did they finally, or who finally discovered that it was, in fact, shingles? And by that time, the shingles had come and gone, but the after effects were what you were dealing with.
It was the ENT. I went to an ENT because I had hearing problems too. And as part of the ENT, I started having tinnitus, right? So as part of the ENT checkup, they found a lot of blood in my ear, dried blood in my ear.
and wax.
Wax. And they said, this looks like it was shingles. So then then there was other doctors that said, based upon what they had seen, the one doctor in Philadelphia said, this looks like it's something like a shingle type of thing. So then it's been passed back and forth that this looks like it's shingles.
Right.
So there's been no real 100%, but that's what they're
That's the
saying.
closest,
That's the
yeah.
closest. And that's the main thing they believe it's shingles.
Right. And I know from my own experiences with shingles that, they encourage you to get it taken care of within 48 hours. Otherwise, there can be repercussions.
Right, and she'd already been past that
Well,
point.
you don't even see it. It's inside your ear, so
Right.
how would you even know?
You can tell a little bit because of the Bell's palsy. If you look
Well,
real close,
you can tell
see
from
my
the symptoms.
face.
Symptoms,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
So you
Yeah.
get to Good Shepherd. What's your condition, and then how did they approach it?
So when I got to Good Shepherd, I could hardly sit up. Right at that point, I had actually gotten worse. Right, I could hardly sit up. So when I went to Good Shepherd, but I didn't go to the main one. I went to an outlier because I couldn't get into the main one. So the doctor said to my neurologist said, "We'll get you into the outlier. They'll see you, and they'll realize you need to be in the main one. They'll transfer you." And that's exactly what happened. I was in the outlier for about 2 weeks, and they said you need to be at the main one. So they transferred me up to 5th Street. and
Right,
that's-
inpatient,
Outpatient.
outpatient at that time.
Right.
And just to show how far she's progressed,
Mm-hmm.
at that time when we were trying to get into Good Shepherd, at home, she needed to get from the wheelchair to the car by sliding on a board.
Yeah.
She couldn't get in herself. At home, she had to lay flat on her back all the time. We were concerned about bed sores from being in bed so long.
Right.
Just basic getting in and out of the bathroom. She had a lot of trouble transferring from the wheelchair to the toilet and that sort of stuff. So from what you see now, it's been a long journey. So
Right. Wow. And when you first, how if I can ask, how old are you, Debbie? I mean, how old were you when all this started?
I never know how old I am. I have to ask him.
Well, you've been
I
married
don't
for
care if he
44
tells
years,
you,
so we
but
know
I
that you're
always-
not.
I
you
always
know,
forget.
You're at least 44 years old.
68?
64?
I'm not 64.
We don't know.
Well, we get the
But
idea.
we know it was 7 years
Yes,
ago it
yeah.
started.
But prior to all this happening, your health was what? Relatively pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played basketball. I played
Volleyball.
I played volleyball.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was a jock
I mean,
in school.
the biggest
Yeah.
shock was the cognitive as well, because
Cognitive.
she told you
Yeah.
she used to run meetings and she was in charge
Yes.
of other people.
You had to be right on top of
And-
things, and people relying on you.
That's
right,
why I
and-
ended up retiring because I
and-
couldn't do it.
And us, when we met each other, our main thing was our conversations,
Right.
or that, and she could no longer communicate well, so it was tough that way.
Right. Although after all those years
Yeah.
being married, you probably don't have to say as much. You kind of know what the other person
Yes,
is.
you-
Well,
You're
that's
right.
true. Well, she even went through a part where she was losing her voice.
Oh boy.
And I have bad hearing, so it was a bad combination. And then with that whole vision part, we had to put room darkening shades, and
Right.
we had to put film on the windows and keep the lights off for most of the
wow.
time. So
So
Yeah.
Good Shepherd came out with a plan for you.
Yes, they did. They came out with a plan, and believe me, it was an outside of the box plan.
Really.
But it was great, and I got to tell you, they definitely did therapy that worked for me.
Right.
And outside of the box is the type of person I am,
right.
because I would do anything and everything. The key is to push yourself and let them push you. It really, really is. And if you get the right relationship with the right person, you can do anything. And it really is. The therapist I had then and now really, I'm trying to think of the right word. Really
Motivated you.
motivated me.
Yeah.
But they also they went above and beyond. There were issues I was having. I had bad knees because I used to play basketball and used to play volleyball. And my orthopod told me he was going to be in the bed next to me because those are the two worst sports you can play because you're jumping up and coming down on your knees. So when I was having a lot of problems in the beginning and they were able to get me up, I was still buckling because my knees were bad. So they worked with my orthopedic surgeon, and we scheduled dates for me to have my knees replaced because we worked as a team between the three of us and agreed that the knees needed to be replaced because I hit a plateau where I couldn't go any further.
Right. And that's certainly not going to help your balance issue coming from your ears and your head if your knees aren't holding up.
And
Another thing, when she's talking about outside of the box, they knew what her interests were. So some of the therapy was like video games where you use your body to use the balance and that sort of stuff. So you had her walking and ringing like handbells with her feet. So she was concentrating on the musical part. So they found everything that she enjoyed doing.
They taught me a Christmas song I played for my mother.
Wow.
Yes.
So how many years or months or whatever have you gone through this therapy, and what kind of progress did you make? I think we alluded to it earlier.
So the progress I've made is, number one, the therapist found that why I was having little seizures, something that they call silent seizures, where I would just like zone out. No one could figure out why. They spent the time really working with me very slowly, and they aligned with my cardiologist once again, working as a team. Got on the phone with the cardiologist and met, and they found out why I was having them, so that they could work with it, and I don't have them anymore. They're gone because they knew what was going on, and how we could control it and get rid of it. So that was one of the things. They've just done so many things to. I happen to be a real strong proponent of Good Shepherd. I've gone through the eye therapy, Good Shepherd. I was released from my neuro-ophthalmologist about a month ago. Totally released. Don't have to go see her. I used to have to wear prism glasses. Used to have to see her all the time. Had to go through therapy, like I said, with Jim. I used to have to do hand therapy. I was released from hand therapy. I had a couple hand surgeries, some heavy-duty hand surgeries. They replaced most of my thumb because I had arthritis so bad, and they used a ligament. And I ended up doing hand surgery up here rather than at the surgeon's office, and I got released from that as well too. And the surgeon was pleased with what he saw, how the therapy was working at Good Shepherd.
Right. She also graduated from the cognitive therapy.
Yes, the cognitive.
She graduated from the eye therapy, the hand therapy. She went through pre-surgery therapy for the knees, the shoulder, and the hip, and then the after-surgery procedures. So she graduated a lot.
Wow. Well,
So-
I forgot to tell you about the hip and the shoulder.
Oh, gosh.
So I fell at Abington Hospital.
boy.
That's another story. Coming out from seeing my mom at Abington Hospital, I fell in the parking lot. Took them 28 minutes to get me back in the hospital because they couldn't. They called an ambulance for me when I fell in their parking lot. But
Oh, boy. I shouldn't be laughing, but
no.
But the one good thing is we're at the point now where the therapists are trying to train us to do therapy at home.
Right.
So they would no longer have us come in for outpatient, and we could start traveling and living our lives and come back to therapy if we need the extra
We can
help.
retire.
Right. So you're not in therapy currently?
No, we
Right now,
are.
we are.
But they're weaning us off.
Got it.
We're coming. We're merging into where we'll be able to do things at home and have them come in for like
Monitors.
monitor us.
Right. So give you a little more control. You could just take it from there
Right.
and get the support you need when you need it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long road for us. Over the course of the 6 years, I've had 7 surgeries.
Oh my God.
I mean, like I said, new shoulder. I had surgery on my hip, surgery on my knees, surgery on my hands.
Wow.
And then it's nice now that we see patients coming into Good Therapy, in the Good Shepherd,
Right.
where they're pretty bad off, and we could show them the progress that Deb's
Right.
been through.
Well, that's part of what we're hoping to accomplish with these casts. You know,
Right.
that folks out there who are facing similar situations
Right.
will have hope.
And make sure they get their single shot.
Absolutely. So to use your word, Deb, you went from being a mess to a marvel. So I want to thank you to Debbie, Steve Schmid for joining us and sharing your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show, folks. Check in next time for another episode of Boundless and more personal stories of perseverance, health, and wellness from Good Shepherd Rehabilitation. I'm your host, Grover Silcox, saying thanks for stopping by. We appreciate your support.